Hello and welcome back to my channel. I haven't done too many videos lately because since Christmas, since the beginning of the year, let's say, I've been pretty busy on my own projects, some client projects as well, so sorry for that. But today I really wanted to take the time to show you about this new tool, which is called Advanced Themer, which is a bricks extension or add-on, if you prefer, that adds a lot of functionalities to it. And as they say themselves, if you go through their website, advancedthemer.com, there's a bunch of features that are just nice to have. If you scroll down on each of the features, you will have some nice to have things. Oops, it looks like I didn't click on the right one because that's the general one. But let's say, for example, here, the CSS variables, you have some nice to have. So I won't cover everything from A to Z because that would be a pretty long video. But anyway, I'll go through most of those things. You also have some game changers. So of course, we don't necessarily agree on game changer elements, but I'm going to talk to you about the 2-3 things that I feel are game changer anyway for me and hopefully for you as well. By the way, right now, it is still available as of this video until tomorrow, including tomorrow, hopefully, at $189 for unlimited license, lifetime unlimited license. You have less licenses that are still going to be available after that date. He promised that in few weeks or months, he will release it for another week, but at a higher price. And after that, it will be gone. Well, not necessarily forever. He might do some sales on Black Friday, things like that. But mostly, it will be gone after that for the lifetime, unlimited lifetime deal. So if you're interested, now is a good time to join. So let's dive in. So I'm going to start when we install Advanced Themer. Of course, it's a bricks add-on, so you need to have bricks. Duh. You will see 3 new menus here: the theme settings, the color palette, and the license. Of course, license, you know what it is. It's the license that you enter there. But then you have theme settings and color palettes. Let's start with the color palettes. When you open it the first time, it's going to be empty. So I've already created one palette for us to demonstrate, but I'm just going to open it to show it to you. So right now I have my primary, secondary, text, links, colors that I created myself. So when you want to go there, you click on add color palette. You just give it a name, default, whatever. And then you add all the colors that you want. And for example, if I want to add another color for action, let's say, I can come here and select that color, and it's going to be automatically added to it. And as you can see, you can add new colors above or remove this particular color as well. I'm going to click update. And now this color, all these color will appear inside of bricks when I go there. So let me just show it to you. I know the last color will not be there because I just added it. I didn't refresh. But as you can see, it's going to add a default palette that you can always, by the way, click here and set as the default one to be sure. And all the colors will be there available for you. Now, if you click on the settings, you will have more advanced settings as well. So first of all, you can add a prefix to those CSS variables, the color variables. Why would you want to do that? Well, if you use another framework, let's call it like that, like for example, Automatic CSS, Oxy or Bricks Props, or Winden, or any other that you might have, sometimes the color might be a little bit confusing, primary, secondary. So to differentiate those from the others, you can add a little prefix here. So it will add that prefix before the color name. For example, AT-primary, for example. Also, you can enable shades. And look at what it's going to do if I enable the shades. I'm going to update and go back to my colors. And now you see creates a bunch of shades for that specific color. So I have my color and I have lighter and darker versions of this particular color. I also have the option of enabling dark mode. If you want to use dark mode, there's a dark mode switcher that we're going to take a look at later on. So you can enable also dark colors, which I will not do here. I had a couple of little bugs. One with dark mode. Well, dark mode is more me that doesn't know how to use it properly yet. And I just wanted to do that video quickly. There's a couple of other things that I encounter, but I want to point out that I'm on a multi-site installation, so that might be the reason. So don't want to say necessarily that there are bugs in the plugin itself. And if there are, just remember that it's a 1.0 release, so it is possible that there are a few bugs here and there. That's why you usually have a launch price at a cheaper rate. So this is for those situations. Now, if I enable my my shadows, and if I refresh that page again, my bricks page, you will see that now any color that I want to put, they will all be there. And of course they are using, as you can see, variables, by the way. So if I use my primary variable here and later on I change the color, of course it's going to be changed automatically because I'm using the variable here. Great addition. If you use another platform, another framework, maybe we'll talk about that later, or I'll do a separate video. I don't know yet. But of course, there are ways that you can use that with other frameworks as well. Let me come back here and let's go with the theme settings itself. All right, so we have a bunch of tabs here. So let's go one by one. The first one is for typography. So it has created some variables for you. You can delete them. You can add new ones. If you if you use a framework, you can delete all of them if you don't want those to be loaded for nothing, because it will create a little bit of CSS. So the weight will be pretty small. But again, if you don't want those, you can just click on any of them to delete them. But as you can see, we have from H1 to H6, we have subtitles, X small, font body X small, button large, caption, overline. These are all created for you. And of course, you can add your own by clicking on that button and adding your label as well. Unfortunately, it's using only pixels. That's a little bit a shame. I would have liked to see rems or things like that. The ability to change that value here anyway. So maybe in another version that will be available as well. So this is for the font size. We also have the spacing. So we have some gap variables. So again, X small, 2 versions of X small, small, 3 versions of small, and so on. Again in pixel. And by the way, you always have minimum and maximum value. That's simply because on the smaller screen, let's say something like 380 pixel on a small mobile device, it will be 32. And on a larger screen, let's say HD monitor, it's going to be 56 pixel. And between those two, for a small laptop, for a tablet, and bigger phone, and so on, it will be somewhere between the two. So it will automatically calculate the space or the font size in the case of fonts, and so on. So these are responsive. Great, great thing. So we have a bunch of gaps, and there again, of course, you have vertical and horizontal padding for buttons, for cards, and you can add your own as you wish. Great feature there again. We have the border radius. So they have created some image, card, and button radius. And again, you can add your own if you want to. For example, if I want to have a full circle, I can say radius circle, something like those values. Most of the time, I don't see it in the preview. You see they are all the same. But anyway, it will still work. So you can add your own, and it's going to appear in the drop-down when you want to insert those variables. You can create your own custom variables as well. So instead of having to go inside the CSS, create the root, and so on, you can create them right there. Again, you will create a new category. You will give it a name. In my case, I created one called spacing. And inside of that, you have different variables in that category. So small, small, medium. And as you can see here, we can put the value that we want. So in this particular place, I can use rem values or any other unit that I want. And I could create another category and so on. Again, these will appear in the drop-down. These will appear in the variables. So great addition. And finally, we have the grids. So we have one grid by default, which is a grid of 3 columns. We have 2 rem as a gap or space between each column. And we have 3 columns by default with a minimum width of 280 for each of them. And again, of course, you can change that. You can create, again, your own as well if you want to. Let's say if I create a grid 4, let's keep the 2 rem, 4 columns, of course, and let's say 200 pixels, the minimum width. So these are all variables that you can use yourself, and I'm going to show you how to use them next. Just before that, I'm going to show you a couple of other tabs. So the class importer, you can import your own CSS class or those from another framework. Let's say, for example, you want to import the Bootstrap CSS. You could do so, but honestly, I didn't find out how yet. Because if I click on Add New, of course, I could give it a label like Bootstrap. No problem with that, unless I don't know how to type. You can specify the version if you want to. I know it's 5 point something. But when you click on Add File, you cannot upload a CSS file here. So probably need some plugin or something like that to be able to upload CSS, or there's a technique that I don't know of. Please put it in the comments if you know any way that I could add CSS directly, but I don't know how to do it for now. But if you do so, you can save setting and these will appear in the drop-down as well. So any other framework could be imported, or your own CSS that you create from project to project. And finally, the resources is for creating an image gallery, as we mentioned here. So when you click on that, you can come here, give it a category and add as many images to the gallery that you want. And then you'll be able to add that in the Bricks Builder. So I won't create one in my case. You could do so. So let's see Bricks itself now. I'm going to come back to the other 2 tabs later on. So in Bricks, I'm going to refresh just to make sure, though I think I have pretty much everything already set. I have created a section with a container, and inside of that 3 blocks with 3 different headings inside of it, so that I can show you a couple of those things. Let's say, for example, if I start with a container, I can come here and use the grid 3, and that will create a 3 grid column. Of course, as you've seen, I also have created a grid 4, so it does show here as well, and I can use that one if I prefer to. Great. So I'm using the grid 3. Oh, forgot to remove that one first, but anyway. So this is what you can do. Of course, I can always come here and use, for example, the this is an H2, by the way. But I could size it differently. Let's say if I want to use the font size here, I could use a variable that that has been created for us. Let's say font H4, let's say, for the size. Whoops, sorry. And as you can see, pretty much the same size. If I go with H1, a lot bigger. Same thing for colors. We have all the colors that we have created so far. So all of that is used here using variables. Same thing for gap if we want to choose a gap, and so on and so forth. So all the variables can be used that way. And there's another way with the drop down that I'm going to show you later. For example, I could right click here and show you the variables that I can enter here. I'm going to show that to you later on. Let's save that first. And now let's go with the other more interesting, more advanced, more game changer, if we keep that term, options here. So let's start with the builder tweaks. So here, the first section here, we have enabled global features. I'm going to toggle all of that on. Note that for the global AI panel, you need to put an API key, OpenAI API key, sorry. So you need to go there, create an account. If it's the first time, you'll have $18 credit, but that's a paid service. So you need to pay for it. It's cheap, but still you need to pay for that. If you don't want that, you will need to disable a global AI panel because, of course, it will ask you to put one there if you save it. We have a 12 grid column that goes with the column grid guide here. and the grid gap goes with that as well. So let's just stay with that for now and show to you, focus on one thing at a time, show to you what it looks like if I refresh my page. So now we have a few new tools here at the top that has just appeared. First of all, here we have the grid guide that we just showed. So the 12 column grid guide with 20 pixels between each of them. So you can use that to lay out things if you want to align things together. Less used with Flex and Grid nowadays, but still some people might want to use that. So that's a nice to have for me. The other one is the X mode. That toggles everything, and removes all the colors, even for the images, removes all the color, put everything in black and white, and highlights every boxes by putting a border around it. So, for example, Kevin Geary lately gave a little class or released a little video about everything being a box, and he shows it to you with borders and so on. So with that, you can see all the boxes at once using this little X-ray mode. I'm going to skip the contrast checker for now, and let's go with the dark mode. So dark mode means that if we have light and dark color, and later on we have a dark mode switcher or button, we will be able here in bricks to toggle between the light and dark color. So that way we can preview right away the colors that will be there as well. So I didn't create any, and that's what I'm not that comfortable playing with so far. But if you want to enable dark mode, this is one thing that you can do. And this is just for previewing in the builder itself. Then we have the advanced CSS that we toggled on as well. When I click on that, I have all my CSS variables that have been created for me and the ones that I created as well. For example, the radius circle. And we have the page CSS that we can put there right away, and some global CSS as well. But this one is more for testing because it's not saved. It will be lost after page refresh. So will be lost. So I don't know what's the use for that. I didn't read all the documentations, but anyway, this is more to copy and paste. Okay, that's it. So this is more for testing on this direct page, but you need to copy and paste that into the brick settings later on. So this is more for testing directly without having to always go to the backhand and the brick settings, save it, come back and test it, and so on. You also have an AI assistant here if you want to use that, of course, with the OpenAI key, if you want to use that for writing some CSS. So that's about those features. Okay, yeah, we have the resources panel will be there on the right side this time. And we also have the OpenAI assistant. So for example, if I want to enter some content, edit some content, or maybe create an image. So let's say, for example, I want an image of, I don't know, a plane flying through a bright sky. So I can generate an image. And this one is pretty small, but anyway, I'm going to use that one. I can save that to the media library or download it. And of course, after that, I can use it the way that I want. If I create a new section here, let's say, and add it to my section. I'm in the right place, hopefully. Okay. And I'm going to use that image that I just downloaded. Usually you will have, of course, the attributes. So that's a pretty small one, but that's okay. So this is how you can use that for the OpenAI, or of course, you can write some content with that as well. So these are those features, the nice to have feature, let's say it like that. So I'm going to go back to my builder tweaks, and I'm going to toggle that off so that I don't have too much tools open at the same time. And let's go with the next section. This section has some pretty interesting features. Some of them are the main reason why I bought Advanced Themer. First of all, you have the enable extend global classes and styles. this is wonderful. And I'm going to show you what it does in a few minutes. But basically, like it says, it extends it to other elements. More on that. Enable find and replace styles. This is more nice to have, in my opinion. I think it's in the game changer category, but anyway, depends on how you work. But of course, this allows you to find and replace some elements, some styles. For example, you have changed a font. You want to change the font from Verdana to Arial, let's say. Okay. And you don't necessarily, if you used it in many classes, you don't want to go from one class to the other to change this font. Of course, if you use variables, not that much of a problem. But if you don't, then you could want to use that, change that in many places at the same time. This is where find and replace styles will be useful. So we might take a little look at that, but not too deeply. So it's not to replace a class or add a class or things like that. This is really to replace one property in CSS. Reorder the global classes alphabetically. You can if you want to. Disable styles on element ID level. So I won't toggle that on. We're going to just quickly explain it. When you select something and you style something, whether a heading, an image, so on, you always do that on the ID level. Unless, of course, you create a class. So sometimes you might want to create a class, or you might have created a class and by mistake you come back and you do it on the ID because the class was not selected. So this toggle here is to prevent things like that. You will not be able to put any styles on the ID itself. Everything will be grayed out, will be inaccessible. Okay, unless you use class, so you will have to create a class for everything. Since this is best practice, but sometimes you might need some ID level CSS. Sorry, I won't toggle that on in my case. I want to keep the liberty of that, but there's another nice feature that I'm going to talk about, another game changer feature that allows me to keep that disabled. Enable CSS variable pickers. So you have seen that I used CSS variables here, for example, for my heading, but I did so typing it manually. For example, like I said, font H1, let's say. Oops. So I need to type it manually like that. Well, this feature here allows me to have a drop down, a little pointer, I'm going to show to you later on, and we can select directly the variable with that instead of having to remember that. Enable autocomplete for CSS variables. So when I type, like I just did, I will have some autocomplete that will show it, all the classes or the variables, sorry, that start with that. Okay. Enable plain classes. That's pretty good. I don't know if I can say game changer, but still pretty good. I'm going to open that and show it to you later. This is really a game changer for me. Enable copy ID styles to classes. I'm going to show it to you later on, but as I mentioned, sometimes by mistake, even though we know that we need to create classes, we forget to do that. We start working on it and we realize, oops, I'm on the ID level. So I need to undo all of that, create a class, and redo everything that I did. Well, with that feature, my friend, we can simply copy our IDs to a class. And I remember that I was doing that with Dreamweaver a long time ago, and I was wondering when that will come to a builder. Well, with that, we have it. Enable highlight classes when selected. This is good as well. So when you select an element with a specific class on it, it will also highlight or put a border around all the other elements that have the same class. So you can see at the same time with one look what you will change, if I can say it like that. If you change just on the ID, or if you change 3 elements out of 6, or all the 6 elements, and so on. So pretty convenient. This is a nice to have, let's say, but a big nice to have. Element count and navigation when selected. So that will show you a little number, and preview, color, and classes on over, so that you can preview it. For example, if I select a color like that, I could preview it directly on my page, which is not the case right now. So let's select all of those, save that, and I'm going to refresh my page here to show that to you. All right, so let's start. I don't want to forget all the things. Let's start with the extend thing. So, for example, I have a heading here, and I want to style it, of course. So let's add some, for example, let's change the color. Let's add the primary color to it. I want to put it to be all caps. Maybe change the size, and now you see my little variable here that appears, so I can click on that and change it to be this size, for example, and so on and so forth. But suddenly I realized, oops, I had 3 headings. I want to create a class, not an ID. Forgot to do it. How can I export that into a class without having to redo it again? This is where our little feature, export IDs to classes, is useful, and this is the little button that we have there. So I just need to click on that. It's going to open the a little text field here where we can type the name of the class. So let's say, I don't know, container heading. I'm going to save that. And now everything is inside my container heading. If I deselect it, you see that I don't have any styles now applied to the ID level. Everything is inside my class. But now I have 3 headings, and I want all of them to have that little class applied to it. So what I need to do is click on it and add the class to it. And you see, by the way, the over effect that we have just enabled. And then do it again there. But what if we have many items, 6 items, 10 items? We have some other down the page and so on. This is where the expand is really useful. So we can use the expand feature right from the structure panel with a right click and right-clicking any element, extend classes and styles. Or if we are already in the elements panel, we can click on that here, right there, to select that. Extend classes and style. You want to extend what? The global classes or the styles? If you didn't create, in other words, any class. In my case, I have a class. That's what I want to extend. I want to extend that to what? Since I have already selected the heading, or the heading was selected first, it shows me the heading. If not, you can select any element here. These are the elements that we have in bricks. That are positioned on the same DOM level or is a sibling. What is a sibling? They are side by side, like that, for example. They are siblings, they are on the same level. Those two are siblings. This is a parent. So my heading has one parent, which is block. My block has another parent, which is container, and the container has another parent, which is section. This section is a sibling as this section because they are on the same level. But there's no relation between this heading and this section, for example. So let's go back and take a look at what we have here. So the same level, that means that they are inside the same block or the same div, for example, on the same level together. All inside the same div, the same parent div, which is the same thing in a certain way. The same parent block, if it's a block, and the same parent container. So those two are pretty much the same thing as this one. This one in a certain way as well, but as you know, we have headings inside blocks, which are inside the container. So if I select this one, it's going to be just the current block. But if I select this one, it's going to be the container that has the 3 blocks with the 3 headings inside of it. That's what I want. I could do the same section as well, since there's a section above the container that would do exactly the same thing in this case. And it could be on the whole page if they are in totally different section of the page. In my case, this one will do just fine, so I'll keep that one. and I'm going to click on extend, and boom, all my headings now have the same class heading applied to it. That's great. That's really great. And as you can see, as soon as I select one, since all of them have the same class, now they all have the same border around it, meaning that they will all be targeted if I change anything inside of that. Let's say, for example, I choose the fonts family. It applies to all of them because they all share the same class, but you see the little border that tells you about that. So little indication, a nice to have feature again. But the expand class and the import to ID is really, really great. Now, just a little thing here, by the way, if you go back to the ID level and you change something there by mistake, let's say, I don't know, I want to have that to be 2 rem, let's say. Okay. And I forgot, oh, I'm on the ID level. I want to export that to a class. Don't do that. Don't export it anyway in the same class because you will overwrite what's already there. It's not going to add the width to rem to what's already there. It's going to replace what's already there. Maybe at some point it will ask you whether you want to replace or append to it. Great feature maybe, Max, if you listen to this video. But for now, it's going to replace it. So don't put it on the same class. Maybe create another class if you want to, or simply go and edit the existing class. So these are the main features. What else do we have here? Find and replace styles that I mentioned. So we have a little here. We have find and replace, and here we have find and replace styles. These are the same things, honestly, even though the style words and it's not written at the other place. And this is really, like I said, if you want to choose to change from Verdana, let's say, to Arial. So this is really a property. It is not a class or things like that. Okay, you really need to change just one property, one CSS property from one to the other if you have created multiple classes that use the same value, which is not that likely. But like I said, this could be a nice to have feature. Maybe not something that I'm going to use on my end. Variable picker, we already talked about that. Autocomplete, plain classes. Okay, plain classes. Plain classes is that little p here. So if you are, I don't know, let's say I'm on this image and I click on that, I can add many classes at the same time. Let's say, for example, rounded image, something like that. And I want to add at the same time, I don't know, gap S, let's say. I know it will not do anything. Just don't remember all the names. So it adds 2 class at the same time. Okay. And even there, looks like well, I didn't have the right one. These are variables, by the way. That's why it didn't work. But anyway, you can add more than 1 class at a time. So if you work with a framework like ACSS, Oxyprops, Winden, and so on, instead of clicking, adding a variable, clicking, adding, sorry, not a variable, but a class, clicking, adding another one, you can, in one swoop, add all the classes that you need for this particular element by using the plain classes. By the way, if you remove them, it's going to be removed also at the same time. So, well, supposed to. Looks like it has kept them there. If I reset the class, no. Update classes. Oh, they're supposed to be removed. Anyway, looks like there's a little bug maybe there. All right. So what else do we have? Light class, we talked about that. Count class, preview and over, and class preview and over. Okay, so we did the main things there. Some others are pretty self-explanatory if you read the text there. The elements, you will like that as well. Tab shortcuts. This is well, more than nice to have, I think. Game changer may be a big word, but I'm going to toggle all of that on. Also, same thing for pseudo elements. These will be really time savers. So let's open those 2. Let's add the others while we're there. So parent shortcut, I won't use that one, but I can still show it to you. Lorem ipsum generator, you can choose between Lorem ipsum and human readable text. This is when you develop and you need some placeholder text, let's say it like that. Disable the pin. You know that when we mouse over an element, we have that little pin that we can add to the favorites. So this is small. It's not a problem for me. So I don't want to disable that, but some of you might. Close all open tabs when clicking on the styles panel. So when I click on an element and go to the styles, maybe the layout will be open by default. So if you toggle that on, everything will always be closed. So that's a way to move more quickly to another item without having to close it first or to scroll. That being said, the other options that we have enabled here will take care of that, so I don't want this feature. Disable outline border. It didn't work in my case, honestly. So when you had a border or box shadow, you always have a border on the selected element. That, in theory, should remove that border when you are editing the borders so that you can have a better view of what you are editing right now. So we'll take a look at that. Resize icon, I'm going to toggle that on just to show what it is, but this is not a feature that I would like to use on my case as well. So just to show you what it is, I'm going to say that just in case and refresh. Right, so the first elements was what we have enabled here, the last element that I just talked to you about. So when you have nothing selected, you will see that appear. It will disappear as soon as you select something. So I'm going to click on an empty space. So this is the layout that we have here in the panel. We have a 2-column layout by default, which is the first one. But you can then have 3 or 4 columns layout, especially if you expand it, because you can if you wanted to. So you might want to have a shorter panel and have more icons one side by side. And this is great because by default in Bricks, when you expand that, you will just have bigger buttons. Now you would have the choice between 3 or 4 columns. I don't expand that panel, so it's not a big issue for me, but some of you might want to change that. Other feature, when I select something, you now have those buttons here on the left side. And this is pretty good. A nice to have, let's say, but that, again, a time saver. I should create a new term, time saver. So here we can go from the content panel to any of the styles element. So the layout, the typography, the background, border, gradient, transform, CSS, and attributes. Now you will probably say, why do we need that? I can always click on styles and go there. Yeah. And if you already have the right thing selected, that's okay. But if you are, for example, in the content and you want to go directly to the background, you need to click on the style, you need to click on background, and then you can start styling. So 2 more clicks. Well, with that, you can go directly to the background right there and then move directly to the CSS tab and so on. So that can be a time saver there as well. And a few seconds here and there removed could mean a lot of time at the end. Second section, here we were talking about the pseudo elements. So then again, pseudo elements. You know that we can click here and change the states, for example, to change the hover state and make your styles. Let's say for the typography, change the color of the font and so on. And then you could possibly go to focus and change something else and so on and so forth. You have to click always, click there, click there, click there. Well, with those shortcuts, you can go directly to a specific pseudo element. So we have the hover state, we have the before, the after, the active, and the focus that are all right there directly. So if I want to use the overstate for that text, for example, I can just make sure that I'm using class, by the way, here. I can click on the overstate, go to my typography, which I'm already there. And by the way, it has locked I've mentioned it previously, I think. When you create a class, it locks it. I don't know why. You need to unlock it if you want to change it. So let's say that on hover, I want to have my secondary color. And let's say that's all. So I'm going to toggle off my hover. And now you can see that, well, sometimes it sticks like that. You need to mouse over it to test it. But after that, everything goes back to normal. Maybe it's a video card issue, I don't know. But anyway, as you can see now, since I put it on my class, all of them have it applied at the same time. We have that new parent arrow. So if I click on that, I'm going to select the, for example, if I'm on the heading, I'm going to select the block. If I click again, it's going to select the container. And if I click again, it's going to select the section. Now, if you know the of course, you can always click on those in the structure panel, but if you don't want to have to go to the right side, you can always do that with keyboard shortcuts. To be honest, that's why I will not use this feature to keep my panel as concise as possible, but you have that available if you want to. Did I forget anything? Go to parent, lorem ipsum generator. Yeah. So I could come here and pretty much everywhere that you have text, but not in rich text format, rich text element. I don't know why. I didn't see it on the rich text. If I bring some rich text here, for example, it will not be available in my content panel. So I don't know why. I don't see any new icons that I could toggle on to toggle it. But you have that for the basic text. You have that for headings. You have that for the text on buttons and so on and so forth. Where you can come, I'm going to get rid of this one. And let's say I'm going to add, like I said, another a basic text to it. Let's say. So here you can see that I have a dummy content. So it's going to add it to what's already there. So if you want to start afresh, you can delete that. And clicking on that would add some dummy lorem ipsum content, and you can add as many as you want if you want to have more content like that. So again, little nice to have feature, not revolutionary, but you have that here as well if you want to. Of course, if you don't remove the existing text, then it's going to append to it. By the way, was that not on the column 3 column layout? All right. The outline. Okay, the outline border when I select this element, if I want to add a border to it, usually I should take the bit of doing that. I should go here, and since I'm editing the border here, it should, for example, get rid of that blue border here. But as you can see, it's not the case right now. Strangely, if I say solid, for example, and if I change to this primary color, I don't even see the border because of the blue border, the default blue border of bricks that surrounds it. So if I need to click somewhere else to actually see the border. Of course, my border is pretty small right now. Same thing with the drop shadow, so on. But so this feature should remove that border. Doesn't seem to work in my case, so don't know if it's my setting or simply a little bug, but hopefully that will be fixed soon if this is a feature that you want to use. Resize icon inside the global. Okay, we talked about that. Keyboard shortcuts doesn't work on my PC. I don't know. Control is the key that replaces usually, I think, Command, but I tried Control Alt, things like that, and none of those shortcuts were working. To be quite honest, though, some keyboard shortcuts don't work in bricks on my end also, so that's probably my system or my browser that maybe has a conflict with some keyboard shortcuts. So I assume that this one are not working because I'm on PC, but maybe I'm wrong. But you can create your own keyboard shortcuts if you want to. Editor strict view, so you can change the logo. Again, didn't have any, so didn't try that. The color mode, the accent color mode, usually should be, in my opinion, these colors here that are kind of yellow, dark yellow. Okay. So if I change that color, this should change for this color here. In my case, again, it didn't work. So maybe I can enable that to test it again. But when I tested it, it didn't work on my end. Strict editor view. I'm going to enable that. And when you enable that, you have other options here that allows you to disable some features for other users, for other types of users, I should say, other user roles. We can disable the toolbar icons. So these are the icons on the toolbar right here at the top. We can disable all of them or some of them. And by default, it's like that. So everything is hidden. You cannot click on any element, and especially if you disable the toolbar, it's going to be pretty hard for people to do any change. Not just saying about adding elements, but they won't even be able to click on elements on that. So you need to select what you want them to be able to click and modify. For example, if you don't want them to modify buttons, you'll leave that unchecked or untoggled. Same thing for the other elements. So everything that you want them to be able to click on it and modify, you toggle them on. You can toggle everything, of course, if you want to. That, by the way, goes with the settings. So I will also have in my brick settings to come here and change my editor. So builder access here. I've switched the editor to edit content because, of course, if they have no access, they won't even be able to open bricks, period. So they need to have edit content. If you give them full access, they will have access to everything, even though you disabled something here, by the way. So give them editor access, edit content, and then you can tweak those things here. So let me continue. Reduce left panel visibility. So my panel here on the left side can be completely hidden if I toggle that on. Header and footer edit button. When you mouse over the header or the footer, you will have a little tab where you can click to edit those. You can remove that as well. And same thing for template and settings link. So you have the templates here, you have the settings here. So unless, of course, you disable the entire toolbar at the top, you can also make sure to disable them, prevent them from editing them by toggling that on as well. So if I save that, let's see. Well, I don't have right now. I would need to be an editor, but everything would be gone if I would be an editor. My structure panel, my top bar, everything would be gone. But I could click on that and just change the text here. No styling panel, but change the text here, put it in bold, things like that. What we can usually do when we double click here. So those tools would be available, but no panel would be available for me. So limited use, but that's what we want. Usually when we do that, we want to limit what people can do about those things. So that's it for the browser enhancements. So that's the bulk of Advanced Themer. Now let's take a look at some other settings that we have here. All right, so for the settings tab, so we have again the add prefix to global CSS variable, a little bit like we had with the colors, but this is for the entire variables, so the font H1 and so on. So again, we can type prefix here. We don't type the dash, by the way, as you can see. So just leave it like that. We have the base font size, which is set to 10 pixels for bricks. So this is the 62.5% that we have in the settings here. So you might want to change things to go together, but in this particular case, that's the case. Minimum viewport, maximum viewport. This is used for the calc function. So again, you can change that if you want to, but I won't in my case. Now the next section, the builder elements. So you can disable that from the website or enable it. So these are the advanced themer own elements or widget if you prefer to. So if I toggle that on, I will have some new elements down at the bottom in my elements panel, and we're going to take a look at those a little bit later. Permissions, who can change the colors and settings, so only administrator, but of course you can enable other people as well if you want to, other user roles. Front end playground, I'm going to enable that. This is not something I think that I'm going to use, but just to show you what it is. Our team, post and pages, if you have custom post type, this should appear there as well. Gutenberg settings, this is pretty interesting. If you are like most people, you will most likely use bricks to edit your pages and use Gutenberg or the block editor if you prefer to edit the posts, okay, and maybe some other post type as well if you have created custom post types. So by default, and that's why I had this page open, sorry it's in French, but that's okay. If I click on the text, for example, I have the default Gutenberg colors here. So with that option toggled on, it will use my advanced themer colors inside of Gutenberg as well. So that's pretty neat. And I can also remove the Gutenberg presets since I'm not gonna use some advanced preset colors and so on. I can disable them. And I'm gonna show you that again a little bit later. Miscellaneous, disable the custom field menu item. As you can see, I have custom fields here. This is, if I open that in a new tab, this is Advanced Custom Field or ACF Pro. Yes, ACF Pro is provided with Advanced Themer. As you can see though, right now it is not the latest version. I don't know if it's written somewhere, but I've seen it. It's 6.0 something. So 605. The latest version is 6.1.2. So I don't know to which frequency it will be updated. By the way, because now, even though you have access to a free license, between quotes, of ACF Pro, you will not have access to support and you will not have access to updates. So if you already have ACF Pro, you might want to use your own license instead. There will be no conflict. It will simply disable this one, but it is required for some features of the advanced themer. That's why it is installed as well. Now, at some point, it will be updated to 6.1 point something, and you should have access to the new features of ACF 6, which is creating your own custom post type and taxonomies directly inside of ACF, sorry. Right now, you can't. You can create new group fields and so on, just like ACF used to do before the VIX version 6.1.2, I think, or 1.1. They introduced it with that. So you can create your own elements here and so on, but your own groups, but not custom post types. So you will still need to add something like do it manually or add something like CPT, UR, or other things. So if you want to do that, you might want to wait for the other update, which will probably at some point provide a newer version of ACF, first of all. Secondly, like I said, if you have your own, you can use that instead. But if you are using another tool like MetaBox, JetEngine, like I do, Toolset, and so on, you might want to simply get rid of that. You don't want to remove it because some features in Advanced Themer will not work, and you cannot anyway remove it. It's not in the plugins list. But you can at least remove that menu from this place by toggling that on, so that will disappear from there and people will not have access to it to, for example, create custom post type with the wrong tool if you don't want to use ACF. And of course, when you delete the plugin, do you delete the data with it or not, depending on if you want to reinstall it later or not. If it's not the case, then you might want to remove the data with it to clean up database. So let's save that. And now let's go again here and refresh my page. Don't know if I have saved everything. Hopefully, yes. So some settings are not applied anymore. Why is that? Well, simply because I have changed my variable names. I have added the AT prefix here. So some features will not work anymore. For example, here I had the font H3. That doesn't exist anymore. It's now AT font H3. So let's change that. If I select that, as you can see now, it has changed. Colors seems to be still working because I had already put that. That's true in the other one. So I think everything else is working as expected. That was the only thing. What else? So what did we change? Viewport, base font. Okay, those elements here. So the advanced themer elements. Let's scroll down. And there we go. We have the toggle dark mode, the dark mode buttons. So if we add those things here, you will use one or the other, not both of them. But one is a switcher. The other one is just a toggle on and off. For the dark mode, if of course you want to use dark mode, if you want to have set dark mode colors and so on. So that you will put that on the front end for the user to be able to switch from one theme to the other. And that's probably what they used on their own website. So this is what it looks like. Beside that, we have, what else do we have? We have color swatch. So you can create your own color swatch. If I select that, I need to select the, let's say, primary color, and I can create my own swatch here. Didn't play with that too much. So this is to manually create your swatches. Put your own label, for example, primary. And there's a little bug here. I don't know why the text isn't showing, but anyway, it does show here. So you can create your own color swatches here. Don't like that in my case, so won't use that. Pretty similar for the preset swatch as well. Theme editor is fairly similar in the sense that it's color as well, and you need to select palette there as well. What's going on? I don't know why I wasn't able to select it. So same thing here, you need to choose which color, and then you see here we have the palettes for all the colors that we have created. And then we have few other settings here, for example, to have some gaps. Let's say I'm gonna put a medium 3 gap. Here we go. And you can change the color inputs, labels, and so on if you want to. So this one is pretty good, but I prefer the other one, which is the color palette. So this one will put all the color palettes with the color label, with the color hexadecimal value, if you're working in hexadecimal. And again, you have some features that you can change here if you want to. Won't take the time to go through that. What's the use of this feature? Well, if you are working with a developer or you are a designer, you are working with a developer, you want to tell them what are the colors, of course, you can provide a PDF document or any other means with that. But you could also create one file where you put those color swatches there if you wanted to. Is that this much useful? Sometimes. Some website that I've seen also, government or brand, they want to have a specific color, for example. So instead of primary, secondary, you will probably rename that differently. But to show that if, for example, a journal or any other thing, a newspaper, want to use your own color, they want to use your logo, so you want them to use your specific color, Pantone color, hexadecimal color, and so on, then you can use that on your website to show them what are the colors to use. For example, a media section with those things. So little limited value, that's a nice to have, like I said, but that's probably the only one that I would use, and maybe one of the two dark switch mode if we work with dark colors. So that's pretty much it for the tour of Advanced Themer. Of course, this is what it is today. It's version 101. Of course, with some other releases, it will change. So maybe that video will not be as up to date. in a few months. If you see it today, before April 16, I really encourage you go run and grab a license of that, because if you want to have an unlimited license, it's there only for a limited time. And from memory, like I said, you will bring it back for a week, but from memory it was $229. The next price will be higher, $40 more higher. So that's a good time to go and grab it. So hope you found this video useful. If you did, please put the thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, and of course any comments are welcomed as well. So thank you and have a good day.